They may not exactly make it public knowledge, but here are 10 UFC fighters you didn't know had kids. Number 10. Nate Diaz. To kick things off, we have one of the most famous names in the sport. Nate Diaz spent an entire career living in the shadow of his more successful brother Nick, fighting for far less money than he deserved. Of course, in 2016, this all changed when a short-notice matchup against the featherweight champion Conor McGregor gave Nate the opportunity to pull off a huge win for his career. And shortly after his resurgence, in 2018, Nate became a father for the first time, welcoming his daughter Nikalia into the world. Given Nate's love and respect for his older brother Nick, it makes sense that he would name his first child to tribute him. That said, Nate does make a point of sheltering his family from the spotlight whenever possible, and when you consider what a huge crossover star he is, it makes a lot of sense. Number 9. Kimbo Slice. Up next is the longtime fan favorite and former street fighter, the late, great Kimbo Slice. And out of everyone on the list, Kimbo is in a pretty exclusive category given that his son, Kevin Ferguson Jr., has actually gone on to be a fighter in his own right. Fighting under the moniker Baby Slice in tribute to his father, this 30-year-old welterweight has managed to compile a record of 3-3, mainly under the Bellator banner, where he first debuted. What's truly interesting about Baby Slice is that, while sure, he does possess punching power that is reminiscent of his father's, 2 of his 3 career wins have come by way of submission. And while that 3-3 record isn't pretty, with him now on a pretty long break from competition, who knows how well he will look when he returns. Baby Slice joins Kevin II, Kevlar, Kevina, and Cassandra as Kimbo's 5 children, and though only one has turned their hand to fighting so far, you'd have to imagine that combat is in the genes of all of them. And with that in mind, do not be surprised to see another Slice making a splash in the world of combat sports before too long. Number 8. Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is a pretty intense dude in every sense of the word, but when he's not making his gym mates look lazy by comparison or slashing his opponents with elbows in the octagon, he's the father to 2 children, Armand Anthony and Angel Anthony. With a future full of ankle picks and wild training regimes likely ahead of both, Tony has always been proud of his status as a father. With his return to the octagon booked against Michael Chandler, fans of El Cucuy will no doubt be hoping that he can overturn his truly dreadful run of form in the cage. With 3 losses in a row against some of the division's very best, the clock is certainly ticking on the 37-year-old's chances. But if anyone can pull off a crazy career comeback, it's Tony Ferguson, that's for sure. Number 7. Khabib Nurmagomedov. And how could we give Tony Ferguson a mention without focusing in on his rival, Khabib Nurmagomedov? Though the pair were booked to fight each other on 5 different occasions, everything from injuries, illnesses, and a global pandemic stood in the way of making this tantalizing pairing a reality. Khabib would eventually shoot to stardom on the back of a truly impressive victory over Conor McGregor, and from that point on, he would never look back. To date, he is father to 3 children, his eldest being his daughter, who is 6, and his 2 sons, who are 5 and 3 respectively. And though we're likely not going to get any major details out of Nurmagomedov about them over the coming years, given that they will be making Dagestan their home, you'd have to expect that they'd be formidable wrestlers before too long, regardless of what path they choose to go down in life. Number 6. Daniel Cormier. Though the former 2-division UFC champion Daniel Cormier has 2 children, his earlier years was filled with a truly tragic story. Back in 2003, DC's first daughter, Kaden, was killed in a car accident at the age of just 3 years old. As the years have gone on, Cormier has become more open about the tragedy and how it shaped his views on the world. But few fathers can imagine just how horrible it is to lose a child in the way that he did. Nowadays, Cormier and his wife have 1 daughter and a son, Daniel Jr., who trains in amateur wrestling at DC's AKA gym. It's easy to tell that Cormier has all the necessary traits to be a good coach, and one can imagine just how well these traits would translate into his role as a father. Blessed with immense physicality and work ethic, you never know, perhaps Daniel Cormier Jr. will be a name that becomes familiar to MMA fans a few years down the line. All that's certain is that Cormier Sr.'s legacy is a truly huge one to build off of. Remember, if you're enjoying our content and want to see more, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Number 5. Randy Couture. 16 UFC title fight appearances remains a promotional record to this day, but it is the 5 separate title reigns across 2 different divisions that is truly the crowning achievement of the legendary Randy Couture. As one of the UFC's first major crossover stars, when the already 34-year-old Couture made his debut in the sport, his stellar background in Greco-Roman wrestling brought a sense of class and legitimacy to the octagon at a truly pivotal time for the sport's development. And out of everyone on this list, Randy has the eldest son of them all, with Ryan Couture, the oldest of the 3 children, having already had an 18-fight run in MMA, fighting primarily under the Bellator banner. While Ryan never quite managed to reach the heights that his father did, he still managed to compile a pretty decent resume when all was said and done. Now 39 years old, though he's not officially retired, his 3-year spell of absence from the cage seems to suggest that Ryan's fighting days are at an end. Number 4. Amanda and Nina Nunes. Next up, we have perhaps the most unique entry to this list, the UFC roster duo of Amanda Nunes and her wife, Nina Ansaroff, who later took on the Nunes name. Both fighters have been in the UFC for several years now, with Amanda becoming the consensus GOAT of women's mixed martial arts and the first openly gay champion the sport has ever known. Nina, on the other hand, well, not the destructive force that her wife is, with wins over elite fighters like Claudia Gadelha and Angela Hill on her resume. In 2020, the pair welcomed their daughter into the world, something that saw both of them take a break from fighting in the octagon. Rogan Ann Nunes is now just 2 years old. Both women are in similarly tricky spots in their career, with Nina attempting to overturn the 2-fight losing streak and Amanda gearing up to try and reclaim the bantamweight title she lost in dramatic fashion to Juliana Pena. But as the first and only pair of fighters to share a child on our list, the chances of seeing the Nunes legacy represented a couple decades down the line might not be as out of the question as one might think. Number 3. Michael Bisping. Anyone who remembers Michael Bisping's earliest days in the sport of MMA will know that he really did mature into a much calmer individual as the years went on. Back during his original stint on The Ultimate Fighter, Bisping was a far more volatile figure. And yeah, sure, his later days saw him dip into trash talk with ease, but you'd have to assume that his maturity came out because of his role as a father to 3 children. One of those kids, Callum Bisping, is actually making some real waves as a wrestler, competing in NCAA Division II at San Francisco State University. At the age of 20, he does appear to have a solid career ahead of him in combat sports if he does choose to pursue it. While the Count entered the sport of MMA with a background as a striker in the United Kingdom, the fact that Callum is preparing himself primarily as a wrestler could well make him a very different fighter to his dad if he does decide to go down that route. Definitely one to watch, folks. Number 2. Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva's legacy is truly among the finest of the sport of mixed martial arts has ever known. Over the course of his long reign as UFC middleweight champion, Silva did things inside the octagon that made us stop and question what we knew to be true about fighting. And as it turns out, he's got more than his octagon achievements to be proud of. With 3 sons and 2 daughters with his wife, Anderson has a sizable family to spend time with in his retirement. And what's even more interesting is that Silva's sons, Gabriel and Khalil, have both transitioned over to their father's first sport of kickboxing. And by the sounds of things, they're not just riding on the coattails of the Spider either. Gabriel shot to viral fame during his pro debut after scoring an 8-second knockout to let the world know that he had arrived. Unfortunately, he was KO'd in just 20 seconds in his follow-up bout. But just as his own father was forced to learn, the life of a fighter is one filled with ups and downs. Can either of his children replicate Anderson's success? Well, that's certainly one hell of a mountain to climb. Number 1. Dana White. Okay, we know that Dana White isn't a fighter. Hell, he's not even a mixed martial artist. But given his status in the MMA world and close ties to every fighter on this list, how could we leave Uncle Dana to one side? Unlike his unavoidable presence within the UFC, Dana actually keeps his personal life quite private, opting to protect those around him from the spotlight that constantly follows him day in, day out. With that being the case, some of you might not know that Dana has 2 children, Dana III and Aiden. And given their dad's major presence in the world of sports, it should come as no surprise that both of his children have already made a splash. Dana III plays pro football as a quarterback for the San Diego Toreros, while Aiden is an amateur boxer. Both guys have trained exclusively in Muay Thai, and though neither has found their way to MMA just yet, can you imagine the Dana White privilege they would get if they ever did? Only time will tell if that becomes a reality, but if one thing's for certain, is that the White's family name holds some serious weight in the fight game. And that will just about do it for this video. Again, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more, be sure to leave a like before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.